welcome to Quintessential Comics. Woohoo! I'm Alice Quinn, and this is our book club. There will be spoilers. And I'm joined today by my friend and co-host.
Sorry, there was an echo. By her co-host who forgot to mute his computer screen, Elijah. Hello.
Ah!
There,
Funny enough, I remembered to do it, and then I was like, oh no, I didn't do it. And then I went there, and then, yeah. Cool. Great start. Great start. So today we're reading Ascension of the Starless. It's pretty cool stuff. And Spera? I think it's Spera. What do you think?
Spera penny for a dime? I'm sorry. Horrible jokes are just been falling out of me this week. But yes, I think Spera.
Did you become a dad or something?
Worse, dungeon master for role-playing things. So I have to torture people.
We'll have to discuss that later, because it's interesting. I'm gonna say Spera, because if there was like a Spera, it would either have an I or an A in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I might get an angry tweet if I'm wrong, but maybe not.
It's Twitter.
Anyway,
I think it's just obligation to get an angry tweet.
So I just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping before we get into discussing the book itself. Normally we do discuss one new issue and one graphic novel. So we have sort of like both formats, and we have sort of like two things to discuss and maybe compare them a little. And sometimes, like if we don't like one, maybe we'll like the other. But this month, when we were looking at what's coming out in terms of new comics and our original book club date, there wasn't really a lot of good stuff out, and I don't want to read crappy comics just to fill space. So there isn't a new issue. You can second that?
Oh yeah, I completely agree that it's better to spend time working on content that's got something to say, whether it's this thing is broken, here's why, or this thing is amazing, here's why. That's a lot more substantial than this is okay.
Yeah, and we've had a bunch of book clubs like that where it's like, it's all right, but we don't really have any strong feelings about it. And those just aren't really entertaining to like watch. And it's sort of, it gets harder to like think of fun things or to say or really to discuss because it was all just super mediocre. So yeah, we didn't do a new issue this month, and because of that and the delays, I've decided to try, instead of doing a monthly comic book club, to do bi-monthly, so every 2 months. So part of this is my own schedule has just not allowed me to dedicate as much time as I'd like to, but also because, we want to read interesting stuff, and while there is some really cool stuff coming out in terms of new comic book issues, it might be that all the cool stuff comes out in 1 week, and then you have to wait 6 weeks for more cool stuff to come out. And we really don't know, and a lot of stuff gets delayed. It's a fun industry. It's great. So we're going to do it once every 2 months. And for those of you who are new to the book club, we try to make it as fully interactive as possible. So we have a Facebook group, Quintessential Comics. I'm just going to pull it up here, and you can vote on what graphic novels and new issues we're going to read. And you can tell us if you're going to join us and you want to be part of the live video discussion like Elijah is. So this is our next book club. It's going to be taking place in March, on Wednesday, March 14th from 7 to 8. All right, and so we've already posted in here our the poll of like which graphic novel and which new issue you would like to read. So you can hop on there and contribute in that way. Or if you want to, if like, you have some suggestions of which graphic novels and comics you think we should read and discuss, you can message me, Alice Quinn, on Facebook, or you can just comment on the page there. So yeah, so it's facebook.com/QCX show is the main page. And then under the events tab is where we post the book clubs. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So, if, there's different stuff we should be reading, or if you guys have ideas for like questions and specific topics we should discuss about the books, I'm happy to take up your suggestions on that. So yeah, you can join through there. And we already posted the polls for the graphic novels and new issues that we'll discuss in March. And depending on which ones get the most votes, in a couple weeks we'll post which one's sort of like the winner, which one's chosen. And then you guys can get the books and read them. I try to, for the graphic novels at least, I try to pick stuff that's been out for a couple months, for 6 months to a year. So maybe it will be in your local library, or maybe you have a friend that has it that can lend it to you. It'll be expensive to go out and buy new comics and new graphic novels every month. So I'll try to make this as easy and as accessible as possible. And I'm also open to feedback on that. Yeah, I think that's it for housekeeping. Do you think I missed anything, Elijah?
No, I think you got everything. You dusted and cleaned all of the house, the backyard, even the tool shed.
Ooh. Yeah, so that's it in terms of housekeeping. Got the tool shed. So let's talk about Spera, Ascension of the Starless. Ooh. Elijah, did you want to start?
Okay, but in my case, in my case with this one, I didn't even know that this was a thing. Like, I just found it at a discount store on happenstance and picked it up because, like, okay, this is like a hardbound graphic novel. It's got neat looking art, and having picked it up on a spur of the moment purchase, it was an interesting read. Although it drives me crazy not knowing what else happens, because it does kind of leave you on I wouldn't call it like Empire Strikes Back sort of cliffhanger where you're really wondering, is everybody going to be okay? But more sort of just, there's more going on here. In fact, I would compare a lot of things I would compare it to in terms of just the tone and the approach to the storytelling is it very much rings like Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's this eclectic cast of characters. It's got some very clear manga and anime inspirations, and it's got these villains that are very avant-garde, but also kind of tragic, because we even see how, how like the one protagonist and her mother and this General Zeal guy were kind of a thing, and they allude to that a little bit and give them a little bit of tragedy there. There's a lot of stuff going on, but also it's very simple, and weirdly, they change the art style like every chapter, which I'm still not entirely sure if I'm happy with, because I mean, there's things that work with the different art styles, but also it's just sort of like, wait, is this the same story, or am I reading an anthology? Nope, this is all the same story. It really kind of jars you a bit, and finally, just in regards to how things go for General Zeal, just damn. I mean, that was like the little George R.R. Martin just sprinkled, and it's like, oh, I'm starting to have this character growth. Never mind. Message for you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, first off, you could just say, like, don't underestimate these princesses. Like, I love that whole, like, medieval speech. Jumping ahead there to the end, but that medieval speech, crossbow to the neck, is pretty great. I like it. Yeah, so I didn't hear about this before. I did some quick Googling. The creator, Josh Tierney, again, with a pronunciation. Who knows? It's a mystery. You think it's Tierney?
Oh my, we're going to go with that, because I've never seen it spelled that way. Yeah, we're going with Tierney.
Okay, I'll pronounce it one way, and you can pronounce it another way, and maybe one of us will be right. Yes. So yeah, I did look this up. It's a collaboration between him and like 40 artists, I do believe, and like illustrators from around the world. So I think he got the like he's like the sort of like writer and sort of world builder, and it seems like he had a lot of the story in his mind for a while, because you could like, even though like a lot of the characters and a lot of the story, there it's sort of like thrown at you, you can tell there's a lot of thought behind it, and behind and into these characters that you don't know. So yeah, I did look that up, and I think there was like it originally was like online, and then there's a Kickstarter to make it into a book. I'm not 100% sure. I just scratched the surface on the website. But one of the things, like when I picked this up and I started reading this, I was like, wait, did I miss something? Because it felt like I was like there was an introduction that I was missing. There was like, because it just sort of starts off in the story. It feels like it's like there was already sort of an introduction comic, and this is sort of the story's already gotten started. It feels like you know, like the third scene in the first act when they're already on the way to the journey. Like there isn't an explanation of like it takes a couple pages for all of the characters to get named, right? So,
and even then, you're still not entirely sure what all of their deals are. Like the guy who looks like, you know, Whitaker from Adventures in Odyssey, you know, he has some magical abilities. Also, there's this tiny cat with an eye patch that apparently is way more cunning a warrior than some of these full-grown men who are trying to go toe-to-toe with it.
Yeah. So there's a great character gallery in the back.
Oh yeah.
That
gorgeous.
Afterwards, I was like referred to. So yeah, all the character art was done by one artist, and then I think they sort of like handed off stories and the character designs to different artists to do each chapter. So yeah, so that was one of the things I noticed right off the bat. And like this is shelved in the children's section, juvenile, of the library. So it seems like it shouldn't be like at least teen, because I mean there is like gore and death, and it's not like an easy read.
A murder victim right at the start of the story. They're like, oh, there's a lot of red and blood. Is that him? Yeah, it looks like there was some claw marks stuff. It's just like, I mean, there's kids who go for that. There's a reason Coraline is popular, but still, it's like, that's an older kid, darker kid sort of thing, and it kind of
It's like when I read Watership Down, and it's a bunch of like bunnies like fighting for survival, and you're like, is this a kid's book? I guess maybe. Yeah, so it's one of those. So maybe you're teen, maybe you're preteen, not necessarily child. But yeah, so like even though, you know, it doesn't feel like we get a proper introduction to these characters, like they're really interesting and compelling, and like even if you're sort of like unsure about this world, it does really draw you in. Pardon. Can be a little jarring, and I know that's like putting to some people, but I kind of liked it. First it was weird, but then, you know, there's certain art styles you like better than others, and also like because they're on a quest, they're on a journey, they're going to different areas. Certain areas are only being shown by that specific artist, which is interesting. I wonder if they chose the artist for chose the artist and art style for the areas specifically.
I think so. I think even in some cases specifically for which characters are being introduced, because like you've got Ruth, when he's introduced, it's in one very specific sort of almost worn down art style, and even when he goes transfers to other things, he still looks sort of thin and a little bit more emaciated than some of the other characters. He's a little bit grimmer, while I won't say grim, stoic, more like. Whereas Sala, no matter when you encounter that witch, she always looks like she just jumped out of a Shantae game and is about ready to just start dancing.
Yeah. And I think a while to get to know these characters, but I really like these like badass boss princesses who are like, we were born into nobility. It's our responsibility to care for the people, even if it's hard and even if we have to go through these hardships. And like it's not like, you know, cake and dresses and Marie Antoinette shit. It's like, oh, we're gonna go assassinate people and prevent wars, and do what we have to, even if it means going through this like creepy underground tunnel that's covered in drugs.
Actually, going back to the assassination example, I love how they handle that with the king and everything. And that's the one part where I'm wondering if they were aiming for this to be kind of at least a preteen, if not a kid story, in that they're like, you know, it would be really a bad thing for a king to just go out and assassinate an opponent, you know, and everything like that. But also, it's the only way to stop this horrible, horrible war from starting. So even the king's like, I'm going to go pray to the gods for forgiveness and just, you know, send them off to do it. It's like, well, we just went Zero Dark 30 medieval style.
Yeah. Yeah, it does work. And like, you know, it is sort of these, like, it does explore these issues of morality and, like, what is right? Because, like, okay, there's an evil queen, you know, and she happens to be Princess Priya?
Pyrrha, I think.
Pyrrha? It happens to be Princess Pyrrha's mother. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to kill her because she's evil. And it's like, whoa. And you know, and the prince is like, that's a little intense. Are you sure? And Lono, the other princess, is like, well, how is it fair for all of these men and women who are forced to fight for this queen die, and then we say, you know, we don't actually kill the evil queen? Like, how is that fair? So, you know, they, you know, it like it, you could tell, even though we're not getting the full discussion and the full conversation of them weighing all the options, we can tell that these characters have.
It plants the right seeds of thought to make you think about this and discuss beyond the story itself. And that even feeds in, sorry.
I was going to say that feeds into the world building.
And I was going to say it also feeds into what I was talking about with how we show them that the villains are, you know, people too, that they had moments where they weren't horrible, horrible monsters at one point. And that's actually kind of sad that everything got to this point, which feeds right back into you talking about world building. Take it away.
You and I think alike, buddy. Yeah, so there's this tremendous amount of world building in the sense of like they're on a journey, so they're going through these different vistas and scapes and stuff. But there's also like hinting at things that we haven't seen happen, or we've just sort of barely seen happen. So the princesses, Pyra and Pyra. Do we say Pyra?
Pyrrha or Pyra, either one works, I think.
Pyrrha? I think that sounds better. Pyrrha and Lono are also adventuring with Yonder and Chobo. And the first time they're like, oh, we're looking over for Yonder. I was like, and then I was like, went back and I was like, oh, that's a name. But we can tell like there's more to meets the eye that then meets the eye with Chobo and Yonder. And it turns out Yonder is a fire spirit and Chobo is like a murderous cat who's got like assassin-y skills, and it seems like he can take human form, but we haven't seen it. But it's in the cover gallery and some of the short stories at the end that he does have a human form.
Yeah, there's that. Plus, they have some additionals. Just, I'm not sure if they're done up as alternate universe or non-canon. They have all these little short stories when you finish the main volume. And I looked up online. There's a ton more online apparently as well, where just they take these characters in other directions as well. And yeah, they keep alluding no matter what to Chobo. Just there's something odd going on with him, down to the point of him being a master player at an MMO, which was gotta be one of the weirdest things that I read when I was reading Volume 1.
Yeah, some of the shorts at the end were fun. they're doing some interesting things. Like they had one that had no text and it was all visual, and they had another one that was like the game as an MMO, which is a lot of fun, and you and I can probably relate to a lot. So, yeah, I guess overall I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure at first because I felt like I missed something. And this is one of the very rare cases where it sort of pays off to read the back of the book, because the back of the book is essentially your introduction. Most of the times, the back of the book just tells you what happens in the story, which I don't like. I literally judge a book by its cover, because if I read the back excerpt, they tell me the character, their flaw, what they're fighting for.
It's like a movie trailer.
And it's like, yeah, and it's like that's like half of the book. So this is one of the rare cases where I'm like, yo, read the back of the book, because it's basically an introduction to the world and what's going on.
Oh, look,
I didn't find like
Sorry, good. I said, oh, look, our text scroll, like with Star Wars.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't find I thought the villains were interesting, and I could see what they were trying to get at with those little sort of vignettes of like them before and them chatting, but because I was more interested in the princesses and their main story, I didn't connect with that as much, because like for the most part, the princesses weren't part of that. The like sort of like backstory of
that actually
General Zeal and Queen of the Starless.
They could have fed in more, shown a bit more of them all interacting back in the past. That could have actually made it have a lot more substance.
Yeah, because like when we're introduced to these characters, these princesses have already like forsaken their thrones and run from their lands and become essentially traitors to their kingdoms, in the eyes of like the law, right? So we never see them before the conflict. We never see them interacting. Like we never see Princess Priya interacting with Queen of the Starless as like a mother-daughter relationship. It's literally, that's all we see. So we don't really have any connection to those characters. And so seeing, scenes of the Queen of the Starless and General Zeal, like, okay, well, it can understand how like evil people are plotting behind doors, but it doesn't have that motivation or like connection to the main characters to make me empathize with them more. Because there is a story near the end about, I guess it looks like them being young and in love.
Yeah,
Zeal
there's
and Starless.
There is. I'm trying to find it. There was one bit that did actually involve Pyrrha and her mother. There was one, like, it's half a page. You see her giving her a fire spirit, and there's also another one with basically Zeal and the Queen as kids, and you see her playing with the fire spirit. And I just keep wondering if that's supposed to be Yonder. I'm not really
sure.
I
think it is supposed to be Yonder.
So I guess,
but yeah, those were just so quick and just
usually wordless too.
Yeah, they just didn't have the weight of the rest of the story, if that makes any sense. The scene between them, where it's sort of like tortured romance, like I thought that was interesting, but it still sort of lacks that empathetic connection to the main cast. But I can sort of understand a connection between them, but it also just might be that that's my bias, that I like more forthcoming storytelling, and I like it when you're sort of hit over the head with what's going on and they spell it out clearly and it's like not as subtle. That could also just be my personal preference. You got to admit your bias when you're reviewing stuff, right? Yeah,
in my case, I'll admit that I just, I like villains, and I like villains that, you know, when they give them something more than I'm cacklingly evil. Zeal, it's the reason I like him is that it's sort of like an updated Darth Vader in that I really get the feeling that he is Pyrrha's dad, probably, and on top of that, his final words are an apology. That it's not that he hates her or anything. In fact, she comments that he probably cares about her more than her mother does. So there's a lot of tortured emotions there that I kind of wish we got to see more of, because it felt like there was like this wellspring of stuff that could have been explored more. And maybe they do in later stories with flashbacks. I don't know. I'm only going on for volume 1.
Yeah, and a lot of it could be that they are building on sort of the story building and the setup and the interest of like the webcomic before the book came out, right? So it could be that a lot of this stuff is really more, you know, more detailed in the little shorts on the website and then just the main story stuff is in the printed book. Mm-hmm. And sort of like the extras that flesh out the characters are in the online stuff. But yeah, they have this scene, the scene we were talking about before, where they, you know, where he's like monologuing, and, you know, from off panel, Princess Lono crossbows this guy in the neck right over here. And then it goes into that flashback of Zeal and Starless, sort of like talking in a garden.
Mm-hmm. And little Pyrrha just, you know, walking around, poking in.
Mm-hmm. But that's short. The next page is this.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the chapter, right? So it's like I would have appreciated like at least one more page of that, or like a couple more panels sort of describing that. So, but it might be that part of what Josh Tierney wants to do is sort of create that mystique, and slowly as the books unfold, give us more background of the characters and flesh it out more. Because like I can't think of a good example right now, but I think there are some stories where the villain is killed and you're like, great, the villain is dead, and then long after you hear more about the villain's motivations and their upbringing, and then you feel so bad for them, and they're like, oh well, they died like 8 chapters ago, but
I have an example. Fable 3. In Fable 3, you have to, it's a game, but you have to overthrow your brother, and literally the second half of the game is basically going, well, it's great that you overthrew your brother. Here's why he was being so awful and why we're all going to now horribly die because of your revolution. So, yeah, it can work.
Yeah, and like, I can't remember what I'm referencing, but I think it is a storytelling sort of technique that has been done before. I mean, I guess Star Wars tried to do it, but unsuccessfully. Of the original trilogy where Darth Vader's a dick, and then they released the prequels where they try to tell you his story, but it turns out he was a dick the whole time. So
Sand. I hate sand.
Where? And I can't believe they tried to make that a romantic hero. Attack of the Clones. Anyway, so that's what we're referencing. But yeah, so maybe there's going to be more of it. I like this. I wouldn't recommend it to you, unless they were like, you know, way smarter and more with it than we give them credit for. Maybe not young children, like, you know, people that have already sort of been exposed to like death, melody, and, you know, darker humor and stuff. So
yeah, like like I said, the Coraline crowd, people who like stuff like that, or if you like something like Princess Ugg or Courtney Crumrin, this is right up your alley.
Yeah. Yeah, so it wouldn't sort of be your first sort of darker comic or darker story, but if they're already into it, yeah. But I would recommend this for people. I think it's good. I'm interested to see what is gonna happen to the series. The second one's out, so I'm probably gonna read it. Yeah. I don't know if like I think we discussed the parts we didn't like, but I don't know if there was anything particularly bad in it.
I can't really think of anything that I really would complain about that would be like objective. Like I didn't really like the, at least initially, I always don't like the transition between the chapter 1 and chapter 2 art styles. I think that's the most jarring out of all of them. It's just sort of like you go from this very traditional art style to, okay, and now this is really stylized and very specific and kind of weird. And then from that point onward, it's sort of a more synchronized progression. Everybody's distinct and unique, but it all sort of flows together. Whereas those first two, it just sort of like, and now we're going over here.
Yeah. And another thing I really liked is sort of these like end pages, sort of the back of the cover for the next chapter. Is sort of just sort of like this silhouette with from the chapter. I just thought it was really neat. I haven't seen that a lot.
It feels like it wants to be an animated TV show almost. It's got a lot of the formatting for that.
Yeah, and the whole idea of like bits and pieces of serialized content coming together. Yeah, I think this would also make a good animated series.
I just want to say final thing, really. This is a good cover. I know this is a really superficial thing, but this is a really, really nice cover. It establishes so much about what's going to happen in this. We have our two princesses. We see them working together. We see that Pyrrha is holding up Lono because Lono is the more inexperienced one. And we see our big baddie for Volume 1. They convey all of that with one picture. That's good.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to bring up another picture I really like. I found some more art on when I Googled it. No. I want the other one. Oh, I closed it. Hold on. Okay. Well, never mind. But I found a good picture of all the characters. Sort of like I might change it to be the image for the book club because I thought it was really great. Hold on, I found it. Okay, yeah, this. I like it.
Oh, they're doing it. I know this is actually a tribute, believe it or not. Final Fantasy 14, its original cover art before they had to relaunch it, they did something very much like this. They're going, I don't know the name of the artist who does that kind of art, but it's clear they're going for what he does with that that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so we got Priya and Lono, and then we've got the underground guide from that village, and then this like magical witch. We didn't really touch up on a lot of these characters, but they all do stuff. And then there's like Yonder, and these scouts we meet at the beginning of the book, and it seems like this is the cat. He's adorable and deadly. Yeah, so I just thought this art was really cool.
Actually, that reminds me. Okay, here's something a little bit more interesting. Going with the guy who was the guy underground, Ruth, which is apparently short for Ruthless. Yeah. He's interesting because he's done a bit androgynously, and that's something, I mean, we see that in a lot of anime and stuff like that, but they do that fairly well. And also, when he's referring to the chieftain of his tribe, who are up there amongst this mine that basically, spews hallucinogens, the tribal leader, he says that his tribal leader dreamed of being a princess. It's very specifically mentioned there, a princess, not a prince, which is, it's done very subtly, and I think that's kind of why it works. It's just sort of a nod there, and then when we actually see the chieftain, the guy is, he's a bit more dainty, a bit more feminine, and it's like, you're touching upon things vaguely, Starless, but you're touching upon them vaguely in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
The one bit in the story that I really didn't so much understand what all was happening there was Sala, the witch, when she gets introduced. What was going on with the guy who turns into a giant jello door that then turns into a giant jello ball? I have so many questions about what was just going on in that action. it is so weird. I mean, he literally, the guy himself said, like warned someone, you should probably step back. And then he starts barfing and exploding, and eventually, he eventually turns into that.
Well, no, he doesn't, actually. What happens is he's barfing and exploding, and then he turns into this doorway to which the witch steps through. And then she conjures up more crap. But I really like how they introduced this character, and then they brought her back later, and it turns out she's working for Commander Zeal. Colonel Zeal, and the Queen of the Starless. So I just thought that was interesting. It was like, oh, who's causing mischief in this city? Oh, it is related to the plot. The enemy's already here. We've come to warn you about the enemy that is already here. So I think there's a lot of subtlety in this story that, I think has been really carefully woven in by the creators, working together, Josh Turney working together with these various artists. I think, I like most of the art styles, like some of them more than others. I like this chapter a lot. But I do like that idea of sort of weaving together different artists and sort of having these different perspectives about this world. Yeah. It's fine. So nice. I'm just gonna hop over to YouTube. There's no comments on YouTube. Everyone agrees with us. We're pronouncing everything perfectly. So
We got 5 viewers though, so hello.
Hi. Hello. How's it going? So, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap this up?
The last thing that I would say is that we talked about how the MMO joke storyline, kind of brought back in, but when you brought up the end page things for all the chapters, they have that little bar in the middle of it that almost looks like a loading bar, and I also noticed that Zeal looks a lot like Ganondorf from Legend of Zelda, rather. So it's like, there's also a lot of nerdy references neatly hidden amongst all that, and I like that they did that, and that none of it is bold-faced, hello, this is a gaming reference. More it's like, yeah, you get that if you actually know what that is.
Yeah. So again, thumbs up to your subtlety there. That's pretty cool. I think it's one of these books that would really that it still would be really entertaining, and also you would find even more on a reread, because you sort of know what to look for and know what to expect. You when you reread it, some panels that you just sort of looked at can come back, and on a second read you would understand it. And I feel I would even maybe I'll reread this after I read volume 2, and be able to sort of pick up on these more subtle cues more. So we're all pretty good. So I think that about wraps it up. I'm Alice Quinn. This is Quintessential Comics. I'm the Alice Quinn on Twitter, THE, and the show is QCX Show on Twitter, and then facebook.com/QCX Show for the Facebook page. You're on the YouTube, so I'm not going to tell you how to get to it on YouTube because that would be silly. But yeah, we're meeting again. I said March
14th?
14th? Sounds about right. It's a Wednesday. I tried to switch it up and do some Tuesdays and some Wednesdays because some people are can come depending on which day. I did a little poll on the Facebook to try to figure out when the best time would be. But yeah, the next one is Wednesday, March 14th. If you want to get involved or have any feedback, just let me know. Elijah, do you want to plug your stuff? Because your stuff's really cool and people should super check it out.
I am at Paradigm Fallen on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube at Unabridged Gamer, where I talk about all sorts of obscure and odd games, and gonna be digging into some interesting stuff. Already talked about an on-rail shooter for the Wii for Transformers that got no advertising but was actually really good, and also discussed very quickly why Battlefront 2, the new one, did not work, except for space, which was amazing. But that's the only thing that's amazing.
I gotta check those out on YouTube. Yeah? YouTube?
Yes.
Unabridged Gamer.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast, and maybe we'll see you next time on Quintessential Comics.
See you, everybody.